Okay, welcome everyone to this week's teaching on Kamalashila stages of meditation. You'll find everything that you need in the chat box. So we'll begin with our prayers.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When as a supreme among humans you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I'm supreme in this world. To you who are wise and I bow, with pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom, too well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
This one,
Dixon.
oh yeah, oh yeah, start no got a share. Oh yeah, they are George, but the other shark. 송구도와 람드나레라 랑규 떡베 동해기스 강시 생기 동해군 양다세바 군에도 기부되니 초예노세 다 기부초가 최기 내세도야 중당부 중세되는 정세되는 전부 기부천부 삼로서야 컨디스코리 송구도와 된도 가서라 랑규 떡베 동해기스 소소 동해기 나와대 삼로다니라 고해 동해기 나수다 제주 삼로다 단다가지 기부 총을 값서 내손을 깨는 내손기 동해진데 요래 삼 대량아 타르바시고요 삼라다미 고반톰디고 삼르케와 달하다미 고반토바이나야 제 동해지랑 신체를 삼 땐도 때와지 말에 삼 어디에고 땐도 때에 타르바토베치도 가수래 차단 봉알라서 버티듯하고도 어디내시 라 고여 동해지나 주다 대주 삼로다네 텔레 메시벨로 기바나시 텔레 탈고도 삼 기바나시 라규 똑베 동해지 강시 생기 동해고세 현다 상마게 현대 밤에서 베니르게 sembe 뭐다 가리나 심지 컨디션이나 가다 직접 동해에서 양대 고요래 삼제 소화도 용요하다 라규 똑베 동해지 강시 생기 동해고 어제주에 세바 제고래 삼라직부 동해지 타는 데 말에서 현심제 강가 동해를 타베 탑제고래 삼구도와 양다 세바 군에도 생기 동해야 세바데 빵바도 바스도와 기부되니 초에노서 어제래 전다 라 동해지 나주 삼로다 동해를 제도 바티신도 심jen신 탐제가 대완들 동해 mid도 바란다 총바이베 대다 탐제가 동해다 자와다 타르베 대완람 거버샤섬 어디에도 당에 시시 개반에 개바 가져갈 겹군에 겹세 산제게 고반텐데 제통국에 타르치베 기부치 간사지 자게섬 어디 샘기기 와르티 기부 쳔부 샘레 송고도 삼로 쳔부 삼로체 통보선데 기부 쳔부로와 삼로체데 당보디 소자 기부 총고스 들려야 정제세되니 기본 정세 다단데 삼로체 가심부 하자 가심부 소자 기부 쳔부세 디송고도야 디지송나
So here to begin with, as the Pandit Atisha has stated in his Lamp for the Path, he says, those who, through their own personal suffering, truly want to end completely all the suffering of others are persons of supreme capacity. So here we begin our sort of journey in this way of thinking by doing the sort of trainings and thinking, the way of thinking of a person of small capacity. So in the sort of being of small capacity, we think about escaping the suffering of the lower realms. And through understanding that, we then want to gain a higher rebirth. So here, describing the being of great capacity, a being who has developed bodhicitta through the understanding of their own suffering, their personal experience of suffering and the way that we suffer in samsara, they wish to liberate all others from that kind of state. So at the level of the being of small capacity, we first begin by seeing the sufferings of the lower realms, the sufferings of hell beings and hungry ghosts and animals, and wish to get freed from that. But at the being of middling capacity, when we sort of expand our mind out more, we see that such states are not ones of definite happiness. They are still in the nature of suffering. They're still within samsara. And so one begins to make an effort to get out of that, to get a kind of definite freedom from that cycle. But when one recognizes that kind of suffering in relation to oneself, and then looks at other sentient beings and is unable to bear the suffering that they experience as well, this is the kind of thought of a being of great capacity, recognizing that all other beings are just like us in not wanting to suffer and wanting to have happiness. And not only that, but they have acted as like our mother and father, our good friends in this life, and shown us great kindness. So just freeing ourselves from our own suffering is not sufficient. It's not right. We don't want to abandon other sentient beings, but rather gain the capacity to lead others out of this state of suffering, of samsara, and place them in the great bliss of Buddhahood. So recognizing others as exactly like us through our own personal suffering, wanting to completely end the suffering of others, we make a kind of pledge to make effort over lifetimes, over eons, in order to be able to reach that goal. So this kind of great thought or great aspiration is something that comes from sequentially training, first by thinking about the sort of level of the small capacity of the sufferings of the lower realms, then expanding that to liberating oneself from samsara, and finally making it this extremely vast kind of mind of bodhicitta, expanding to all sentient beings and wanting to free them from suffering.
Oh yeah, what do you do that? Kasora. Shitsu sent of the Tambu Shitsu, Jambata Jawa, Sora, don't get the trend to get Jawa, Tawa, Tom to get Jamba, or Teletania goes to Nanny, Jambata Ninja, come the Zawa, Ninja Chen, Chanju to the same Kewudwa. Or take the Tambung around the Sosolia, don't get the trend to Tawa Tom to get some Yorba, Rangi Ranglia. Rangi Rangla Zawa Yorba, not to meet on the Jigmare, some don't be on Tapsi Chira. Tawa dan den ba che gu san tawa tom de gu ta shi chi do ra zo chi da mi so su sam lo len ji na lia ra tawa de ba da tong me do ba sam lo ti yo wa ra la zawa yo de zawa chi shu ti yo de rang ge ra lia ta yin ne ra la zawa de da ra lia tawa tom de gu tawa de chen de sam ma do chi da sam lo ko yo ma ro dang bo ale de shi song gu ra tawa tren de da tong de tren de zawa chi yo de Dinner she sang the Pama than Yandula Soba Shandala Toast, Dawa Trendu, Tunga Trendu, Sawa Yungutua, Mingo Machine, Tunga Signona, or Kotunga Trena, some Koliabuchuna, some Rally Abuche, Macha Joke, Mana, at some Kogoda. O Tia, I get Tangiora. Arazu Shila Yebe, socially, I chamba that saw you there. 2 years ago, Chendele Tandangazo. Chendele mean Zambulin dinner, Mitambo Chayunde. So, Kangi Mambuchiora. Kaya dan Kamba Meba, Dan Saya, Tonga Kanga Meba, Kangi Mambuchiora. Tea in the Cote of Dunga, the train to some Liora. Tea, the autumn to some Luchagan to some Liora. Tea, you do collect Yamni, Tambuta Buddha searches, Kanga searches, Kalikale, Neke to say, Yig to say, Rolamga to say, the Shingatabeda. And this also Chibu Maimban Minyam do Lagache, Kashe Shingata, Kashe Nangi Lagache, Yamdo Sodegdua. Tangi Melo say in a mancha, so the Kunkiche, Sodegdua, Shanta Tegumarwa, or Nazulung, but providing Nazu Kavina, Shinga Sosu Tabgure, Tolo did not put the Sosu Tagre, Hango Sosu Sovere, and the Paju de Jeda Simja Yande Shodo Sosu Sovere, Kanga Sosu Chedegdua, Yamdo. Talk about situation Namidagade. Or Tingam do Lagache to a. That is how there's Nico social Lagachemo, Shingaga mission that tablet, Laga Kaga Hachamato, Kangachibe Lagache de Yora. Tiendo Kangachi social and joy over something, Yamdo Lagache got to doa. Or Tinduko, Tambune Shiliang and the Chamba that saw Yore, Shella, Chamba that saw New Chunju Yore. Tia get on get some local yara. Another rangi hala chawate. Sawa read it, Sawa Chetan Shingi Omara, Rally Abu Yongo, some Yabu Yon Gula Mambe said, Do we have Gula Begiora? Do my go some day Bayad Chagdan the condo that say, and it to we yon Gula Begiora. Some Nazu Ran Sawa Yora that it's Sawa the session Yomara Sungora. They young to a Cheresil Tobatinal. Tangre Rala Zawati, Kudu Ninji Charme Purse. Narazo Ransosul Sawa Yorde, Setake Sing Mara Sendi Tanda Kangan to the Trayada, Tawatoya Rizimato, Tendo, Tawatoya, Tendo Tungele Trayada, Koya Tungel to some Koya Mara, Tadungusum Tonde, Mezindina Mado, Tangma de Chema Yungus on the Coke, Sigmedua, or Chanju Samba Tende Maris. Tangde Rala Zawati, Kudu Ninji Charme Purse. Generasila Soba Chanju Samba Tazuke, Nazu Tungele Tendo Tarwase. 대화 탐제된 덴버지 자꾸 그래 삼 대투기고 그래서래 장가라주 소소소소를 써와요 하래 집에 써와 이거는 요데 세다 메시를 써와 충중 가충중 무슨 통대도 마도 가심 무슨 코고면도 전주 선박에 나줄래 하고 써와요 그래서 어디인데 근데 써와야 가게네 아니 소소 나옵니다 심지 탐제리야 써와요 그러 시소서디 잠바다 써와네 속도 텔레 때네네 다이케부 최고 삼로코도 다체 데자 마르다세 겨요르다세 소보데 간간다 마르다 소보샤나 셈비 큐데 로그르다세 겨랑에 요레스도 다이케와 심마 펜제요나 다이가 쳔보 삼로로바 쳔데 퉁도레 겨와 갸쳔보레 겨 마오바네 베 마부 대고로와 냠마 대서르데 겨와 지기 제마도 셈비 큐데 다가 대요르와 어티인도 야 삼로 따나 타릉보레 소소다 디도단 저요버데 야삼로탄의 가심보래 내 마음바 용주 삼로탄의 야가체나 도체나 투주 마음보 요라 어디 인도사 아니 심제 탐제도 깔레 캡제로 기부 총고단 증대 셰벨람도 림빌롬네 사제지 고반 토바 차고요 삼베 삼로 끼게 와도 어디다비 삼로데 투케네로와 사제지 고반 진에게 토버샤 대조 톱제게 람데 람리아네 쳬리아 터바체 삼바체 림비 콤바체게 인삼네 삼바쇼스야 다 마도체 스콘다.
So here, the foundation of bodhicitta is having love and compassion. And so love is that wish to have the happiness, for others to have happiness. And compassion is the wish for others to be freed from their suffering. And when we have great compassion that expands to all sentient beings, we can then generate this kind of attitude of bodhicitta. But the real root of all of this, the foundation of generating these attitudes, is the kind of natural love and compassion that we have. We have this in relation to ourselves. Naturally, we don't have to think about it. We make effort innately to achieve those things that make us happy and to alleviate our suffering. And most of the time, the greatest love that we have is for ourselves. And we're really mostly limited to thinking just about this life. We don't usually think beyond that. We're just wanting to gain happiness in this life and alleviate our suffering in this life. And so, yes, we can have a kind of love and compassion that extends to our family, those that we are close to, our friends, and so forth. And there are even times when we can have these attitudes that arise spontaneously in relation to someone we don't know. We can have a feeling of like, oh, may they have happiness or may they be freed from suffering. But this is something that we need to develop and increase more and more. We can recognize that if we look at sort of the development of humanity, the sort of love and compassion, beginning with the love and compassion for ourselves, is what led us to develop like houses and communities and planting fields and so forth. We have worked in order to alleviate our sufferings of cold and the elements and not having a stable source of food and so forth. The kinds of things that we have developed, language, a way to be literate. These are all in order to achieve our happiness and alleviate our suffering. And so, in the past, we really saw our sort of direct connection with others in terms of like in Tibet, a family would do all of their work for themselves. They'd be planting the fields and they would make their own clothing and their own shoes and so forth. Now, these days, we don't maybe do all of that work for ourselves, but we can see how the work of others is something that we are dependent on. We are connected to others. And it is with this sort of seed of love and compassion that we are able to generate these kinds of attitudes and develop them more and more. Most of the time, though, even when we have sort of love for ourselves, we want our happiness and we don't want to suffer, we don't make the right kind of effort. We don't actually know the things that we should be doing to achieve our happiness. So there's a verse in the Praise to Maitreya that we have love for ourselves, but we don't actually know how to get it properly. But bodhisattvas, they are wishing for they have the greatest compassion that wishes for a definite freedom for all sentient beings, not just wanting sort of trivial things in one life, but rather thinking much beyond that. So our normal sense of love and compassion is usually limited to ourselves and those that we are close to. And it's mostly directed at things that we can see. free, wanting to have sort of happiness in this life and alleviate our suffering. But if we take that seed, we can increase that and expand that and recognize that all beings need love and compassion. And it's not just for this life, but we have to give up this life. We might think that like this is all that there is, but really our mental continuum will go into future lives. We've already gone through many lives casting off our aggregates and taking up new ones. And we have actually had many relations in the past with all of these various beings. We've gone through good things and bad things, but we are able to, if we have this sort of long-term view, recognize the importance of developing, expanding, and increasing these attitudes of love and bodhicitta until we are able to have the kind of attitude that wishes love and compassion, until we are able to generate this attitude of bodhicitta. So this is wishing then that we are able to achieve this state of Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. And this is something, again, that we develop through training sequentially our mind until we get to the point of that wish to achieve the state of Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And in order to do that, we need to hear the Dharma, contemplate the Dharma, and meditate on it. And so with this sort of motivation, we should set our minds, our intention for listening to these teachings with that kind of bodhicitta attitude.
Oh yeah, what they do shita. Oh they do tang as kasi chin sari rochar dimba. Oh they carry rososena. Chanju samba namjita. Thamshi nikalia. Jango rese. Chanju samba namji. Tongbanye dobe shirap janjang sone digma rese. Jamba da zawala soba shembeng samlo chanju samla soba. Oh tezu nikala jango rese. Tisonswa. Akaresena. Tongbanye dobe shirap janjang loptena. Chambara Niji Janju Semla Soba Simje Tamjela Magombacha, Simje Tamje Tola Samu Matan Chanju Semajiba Ina Sungura, and it Taba member Tajumana Shecha Ranchibu, Tarvan Yobo Tovia Tandala Sadura. Titsonani Shive Taseterva, Yandeg Tamade, Ranchibu, Koale Tarsamchi, Yamotsam Pambamato, Mishiba Momba, Babamba Shet, Yande Tobdura, Tini Timelam Shudu. Just a team membership, and they should have done a long night. They look at anything, maybe young Ellen Debetal long grace. Then it's Sanjay Command Toby, some Tamjo to the society, go to Rua. Oh, T. Duzanko Tub, Nijimbu Savachane, some Tamjo to the Sanjay Command Toby, Tubs, somebody tell it tango grace. Tell a Magun Madina touch it long grace. Ya Garsoda. Tab Janjan le Tembaina, Samba Sambo Janjan le Tense, Shirap de la Malovina, Tombany Tobe Shirala Loba Machena, Sungurno, or Nira Tombany Musum to Marwatin, Sosiko, Soso led and Yamo Beshama to Juruche, Yamo Beshama to Jur, Soso Sem Gishama to Jur, Sem Yamo Beshama to Jur, into Yamo Beshama to Jure, Sosiko Chete Mato, Tombany Musum to Tone. And the rank Yamogi want to Bandro at the young Marto. Oh, Timacho Hina. Any idea to go to Kasura. Tarva Sanjay Koban Toy, the Tarva Toy, Legmato, Tombany Tobe, Shirap de la Majana, Rani Sosuki with Salad Nedu. Tia touch a little grace. Or Tia Dizako, Tanila Malua Chiche. You got Sibetala Long to Rat and the Tombany Mato was a Tabjana Sita. Koala course tegava, Sosu Siditira, Sosu Lang and Basane, Sosu Tongina de la Sosu Osira, Sosu Dolechanga de la Sigada. Pagbe Kansas, Telekeba to Pane, Tombany Musum to Tosona, and then Yamoki Shama to do your marba, Tanzin Shama to do your mardo, Telepagbe Kansas Yordo. Oh, this was that tiny Malon's chorus, teaching Sheswa.
So here, in terms of what we have gone through in the text, we have been discussing how it is that bodhisattvas need both method and wisdom. They need to have both of these in order to progress to the state of Buddhahood. It's not sufficient to just train in the wisdom side. One needs to have love and compassion and bodhicitta, and that kind of view striving for the aims, the welfare of other sentient beings. If one is just training in the wisdom side, in coming to a realization of emptiness and so forth, one will be making effort at quickly gaining one's own liberation. And so that kind of leads one, that solely training in the wisdom side leads one to fall into the extreme of peace, because one is striving to, is really creating the causes to eradicate one's afflictions, but not that obscuration to omniscience. So one is able to eliminate the afflictions, but one just cultivating wisdom will fall into the peace of nirvana. One needs to have the method side in order to avoid that kind of extreme. And one also can't just have the method side of the practice, but one also needs to make an effort at this direct realization of emptiness. So long as one is lacking that, one will be under the control of our various afflictions and won't even be able to achieve one's own liberation. One will remain as an ordinary being that is still in this extreme of samsara, subject to cycling because one is under the control of those afflictions. One will accumulate karma and thereby be propelled to future birth. So without the wisdom directly realizing emptiness, one is not able to become a superior being. A superior or an Arya is no longer under the control of the afflictions, grasping at a self and so forth, such that they're no longer creating karma and no longer an ordinary being. So here it is necessary for bodhisattvas to then practice both method and wisdom conjoined together.
Oh yeah, that is it. They come de la doi long time she shake doa, she saw. Or de carisha sosena, Papa Church event dona son doa. Then I made you Tamushibu Veshero, such a Tamushibu and Lagba Capchena, Tame, Tangre Severa, Tame Reza, Lagba Cap Tamuyana. And you call Mel tap the melting it wa. Tamanti exactly Cabeshedo, tap short to you what they made wa. Tangi Melo such and metan Madus and Temsike Marwa. The melting it is Gora. Or made the Yabu Tepsi, tap short to Cuba, Koma, Yakshudi, Metro at the Metan at the Wakana. Oh, Nitilia subsociation machine to the Tuja, may Yabu subsociate is Gora. Or Tina Melia, Zichambuchigre, Tepsi Yakshudi, DMJ, made the Yabu by a Tepsi Chigricher. Ina ko mela lagwa chang ma re chera mela lagwa chang ne te le chigre ba ani sosule le tunga yogre semle tunga yogre chera te pele chare pe te shin du siwara ni chanju sambate khwale thar de go yore khwale thar be she du tongba ni kom go yore tambu samlu tandu sa rani khoe tunga jinna su samlu tandu ta khwale thar wa chi chine ki chaku do samche tandu lo chera I choose to change some cases, some jet tamjek turn to ready, so she does anish, you dip by a shitty by the soldier. Landor Genet tamjek king Kembate, Sambotarshin, the Landor Genet tamjek king Kembatarshin, but the nation did to well election but to or Gabaja Tarbato education, Bumevashare, Kuala Corner, some jaggy turn chene, Ninja the Malam Goange, let a new Beshawan the Kuni. Kwama kuna nyingi da malam gonga simje to beshido ko al korgi ware o ti indiko tele karsara chidan ko ale tharwa deva rete te tandal tombani komgore ina ta tanda songmi changsum sigara ta ti mashen kajir sanje ye chidwa rang malam yoso sogwa sero sanje ye shin yoso changba sero ra tende wara songmi changs Tanda so Sange to Simjin, Court of the Children draw but to ya, she said the Kong to ya pay. And the so Sange is a Sange Shingam to the Dueda, the Zukangasa, the Zulamala Wuta. Then she did the pan, she did the Yamdoya pan, she got it. Sangye chojo chene ne nyomo be triba pa shije triba chicha to pandu gore shiti panche so chi yoro o ti sonza ko shiti panche so chi re tongba ni komje so chi re ina tongba ni komni gyoba ranchi bu ko le tarba dengo du chi ma re se gora ti na nga tekba membe lamle ya tong du re sam tekba membe tra chum ba na shi nyangele de ba toba re de nyangde ge tamatel ne du re sam che tagi miti ge mele lagba ma chang ba shindo ro tanda namsan tarba ngon du che na 심지에 또 주변에 좀 메시지 tarwa tumne tekwa membe nyangde ya nyangele debe thala longdura chanju sambate sishi thala meneba skora koala lanyu yonge meneba ra rache bu koala tarwa sam jogo ngondo mechenge chema nyomo bata shije tribaniga pange pangbango de chige menebe nyangde se do sanje ji nyangde tela menebe nyangde sibe thala meneba shive thala meneba sibe thala meneba de nyomo panza ngura shive thala meneba de shije triba panza de nyomo kyanja pangba to maro mi shibe mo panza sanje ndo ya o ti ko chi sung sung ya te de.
So here, as far as a basis for this assertion, there is this sutra that is cited. It gives various sort of sources for this, but going back a little ways to the quotation from the heap of Arya of Jules Arya Sutra, it gives this example of how a bodhisattva. Trying to find them. This is actually from the 10 qualities Arya Sutra. I was in the wrong place. Here, this is giving the example of like someone, if you're really cold, you would seek out fire. Fire is the best remedy to be able to heat yourself up. If you're really cold, you recognize the value of that fire and you respect the fire's ability to give you heat. But as it says here in this example, for instance, a person who is thoroughly devoted, actually it comes a little bit before the quotation there, but it says that, so wisdom separated from skillful means is bondage for bodhisattvas. Therefore, just as a person chilled by the wind seeks the comfort of fire, so a bodhisattva cultivates the wisdom of emptiness along with skillful means to eliminate the wind of wrong view. But he does not endeavor to actualize it as the hearers do. So here, and then it comes with a quotation from the 10 qualities Arya Sutra. So someone can have a great deal of respect for fire, but they aren't going to go and grab it with both hands. That's going to get them burned. And so too, when it comes to a bodhisattva, they recognize the value of liberation, of getting out of samsara, and they want to get out of samsara, but they don't see that as something that is to be actualized as quickly as possible, because for them the primary thing that is to be removed is the obscurations to omniscience, these knowledge obscurations, and they want to bring their knowledge, their wisdom to its completion in order to be able to benefit other sentient beings. So for them, the idea of benefiting others, of working for the welfare of others, is more important than immediately, quickly obtaining their own liberation. So this sort of out of prayers and aspirations, bodhisattvas remain out of compassion in their prayers within samsara in order to benefit other sentient beings. And so here there is, for bodhisattvas, a general desire to get out of samsara, but they recognize that that's not the main kind of goal. They're mainly focused on removing the kind of knowledge obscurations and being able to benefit other sentient beings. So there is, in this process of going through the various paths, they don't need to first remove all of the afflictive obscurations. You can actually get to a point where you remove the afflictive and the knowledge obscurations at once. But they're mainly focused, again, on removing those knowledge obscurations and are not trying to manifest or actualize nirvana as quickly as possible. For them, that would be like grabbing onto fire. So if one is to actualize in nirvana, that negates the ability, that means that one's not prioritizing the kind of workings to free others. So here, bodhisattvas are trying to actualize this non-abiding nirvana, wherein they are neither abiding in the extreme of peace, like hearer and solitary realizer arhats, nor are they within samsara in the sense of being under the control of their various afflictions. So here again, this is describing how it is that a bodhisattva is aware of nirvana, but is not trying to actualize it. As it says in this quotation, this is because he realizes that by doing so, he would be turning away from full awakening. So a bodhisattva is striving for this non-abiding nirvana, free from either extreme of peace or samsara. Oh. Yeah, tanda kogido.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that in it, Tapsi Sundre said, Tandachi Sheswa, Tap the Shiram Niga, the Sundu Java said, Tongbani Musum to talk with Kamdrachina, and it Tongbani talk with Shirab the Yoramado, Tap Chamba, the Sawa Chanju, some the Sobato, the Juto Mado. The Negam Nako, Tap the Mus Yomares. In a Joanne so. And then some Jetamjek to Sanjikova Tovachas, teacher to Tombani Kongi someday, Jorosha. The Negers Tab Yordo, Tab the Simbecon and Tombani Kongodoa. And they said of the Negers, Yamsale answer to alternate Tombani. Don't number Madu Jaya, don't number you now do some Kumata Buddhism. Or any some Jetam Kesa, some Jetamjek to Dongola Sobaya, Tab the Simgirido. Or in the Choa, and wishing you can negate Sumbute. Tabsi Sundi to come with S. Yamsa Mushi Negapso, and it tab the Omares, one to cure Omares on Gora. That's it of the Negabna, Chore Negabla Sobaina, Tab the Shiram Negasun to the show, Tombani Samlatan with it, Tabi Samlatan with a nigger. Chore Negabna, Sheto the Negasu, Tabsi Sundi Nega show with S. Yamsa Negabna, Tab the Mus. Oh, yeah, teach you now.
So here then, continuing with what it means to have a union of method and wisdom, here it's explained that when one is in this kind of meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, one doesn't have the method side directly, as in one doesn't have a thought of love and compassion at that moment of being in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness. But at the time of sort of preparation, or when one is preparing to go into that meditation, one is going in with the intention or motivation of, I'm going to meditate on emptiness for the sake of other sentient beings. And so at the time of sort of setting an intention or going into that meditative equipoise, one has this union of calm abiding and special insight. Although directly, when one is in meditative equipoise, we can't talk about there being a sort of manifest method side. But then in the periods of post-meditation, in the subsequent kind of attainment periods, one can also have this union by recognizing that all is illusion-like, that it doesn't actually exist as it appears, but all of our roots of virtue are going to be dedicated for the benefit of other sentient beings. And so here, when one is in those sort of non-meditative periods, one can be thinking about emptiness and thinking about love and compassion and so forth, and it's easier to see the sort of union of calm abiding and special insight. But while in meditative equipoise, one is only directly realizing emptiness. We can't speak of it as sort of manifest method side.
Oh, yeah, actually, also Donalia. Simply Tamjay to Chanju to Simpkin, somebody and the pay the social pay or so. Oh, pay Caruso Senda, Nika soda. Oh, Milam Gambala Soba Meton, Kaduina, Milam Sanja de Chanju Sambala Soba, and Chanju Samla Soba and the Comia. So Angarazo, you make only some restriction, but Carical Town in a Milam Dangiora, Chanju Samba to go, some gentle, Chat and Tendisha, some town to do, Sandaya Tendre Cora, Chanju Sam Kebata, Chanju Samba to Chusum Sanja Chusum Ola Soba, all Milam Sambora, Tendre Tonada. Will Hanam Gijati Sonata, Mitsamako, Chanju Sem Konge Samba Sambu Chenge de Loko Kawa Yungurdo, Mendam Giko Kawa Jugurishu Sado to the Chagadese. Oh, ni Lilia Tini Nasa Mabata, Hala Sobo Teju Suan, you are Sobo, Penny Mambu, or the sticks on Swan, the Penny Dilhamat and the Yungura. Oh, did you do matter?
No. So then we turn to a description of the kind of benefits that come from this practice. And so here, these were some of them were described. We had gone through some of them in the Pure Field of Engagement Arya Sutra. And so here, this describes how those who become familiar with compassion, skillful means, and the awakening mind of bodhicitta in this way will undoubtedly excel in this life. So you'll have successes in this life. And also it says that Buddhas and bodhisattvas will always be seen in dreams, and other pleasant dreams will occur. So again, when it comes to what we dream about at night, it's really primarily based upon what we think about most during our waking hours. So if we are thinking about Buddhas and bodhisattvas, thinking about the teaching of the Dharma and so forth, then we're likely to see those in our dreams as well. And it says appreciative gods will protect you. So here, again, when one has this sort of attitude and is kind toward others, you are generally liked by those like these kinds of appreciative gods, as it's translated here. And so these are some of the benefits that we had gone through last time of this kind of practice.
Oh, yeah, that's a daily one day. And the pain, the Tama de Libdoa. Send daily to be pains, you do, and you send Gombala Soba to send daily pain, then you stand the shade or Tadalia. What under there? In the Kasoda. Oh, Chive to Geshe, then Miss our Sanjeda, Chanju Sembanam, Tor Euros, Chigalamaya, Sanjeda Chanju Sembadan. Ni chanju semla soba semje tangla sam koyla soba tu koyongora oti de ni kyo chima de ko chanju semla soba lo chaya ni ba shuk chimbu yongora do o de chen de le chong pen re songora ta chirab shendo ya pen kari yongura sena chirab shenda shena ya sanje da chanju semba ta medrewe yida se sanje da chanju semba tende shusa ge yosa ge longba tende le kigre se che da ko jawa ju yote Jama de Yosala Kigores or a Chendela Rangan Bushayo, or Jimmy Kawa Shandoya, Sanje de Chanjusemba Mendreve, you Kebarja, and Kebardo Pub, Kim de Kevar, Chuyunge, Sanje de Chanjusembola Soba Pebde and Zambuli, Shinkamtendela Kidores and Gora. Tena, the Bear Meguevara, Sundam da Shigi saw, you also saw by Jedosa, or Shida Chanju to the same case. She see by Carasora, Kevin Mambo Kalekapje. Sambutan Shani de Kalekap, Sambutan Shani to the Simjan Gitanshi to gain some teacher in the Kadu in Kosunam da she gets a pendura, cussing at the Italian Roswa. Chanju Sabatoko, Zamur of the Kuyanche, a part of Drag, Luke trading to the Tars, Champion Royna Tezoko, Sanjay Kovanto Becudurs, Nilo Inako, Lutoya to the Nilo Yora. Lu Soa de Simjay to pay also dancer or Kiwana Kyopa Kalaki touch each other. Some human shepherd this on Gua or this on Gura. And no longer Chewa dance, Yokoro, a Mawa Durosita, so Yang Lagachangela Soba Kanga, Chetu Betungi Kanga, Sambutan the Kigris on Gora. Shirab Nova Kyo Mambola, Nika Soda. You also remember Cheba Juros or Shirab Nambuchane. Somebody do Ted Genia, Kyo Mambola Church and Bola Soba, love the Chigi Chibola Soba today, Mambotu Cheto Buddhist and Gudwa. Simja Tamja Sirab Tember Jurose, Sira Tamja, Sirangama, Takyoangama Tembola Soba. To that pay, Semeba, Doshele, Juma Kundu Chiba Showers, that and that. Chanju showed the same cane, Shangitan Kona Sabana Sendelaya. And the pension we are the Kawashimanamsa, pension we are the Kuntu de Dugara. Kawasa Shabba de Kawashimanamsa, Satamita Sanjay Shinkam to Delicate, could you into Janet and on the Condia Pedro or Tibato Chico.
So again, going through these benefits, there are benefits that we get in this life that were described above, like having much happiness and mental peace and being free from disease and so forth. And then we turn to where we had left off, which looks at sort of our future lives. So it says, at the time of death, too, you will undoubtedly see Buddhas and bodhisattvas. So here again, if we have trained our mind in this way, and we have developed this kind of attitude of respect and faith in Buddhas and bodhisattvas, then in our future lives, including at the time of our death, we will be able to see Buddhas and bodhisattvas. And then in future lives, you will be reborn in special families and places where you will not be separated from Buddhas and bodhisattvas. So we're creating the kind of causes too in our future births, be born in realms, these kind of special realms or fields where the Buddhas have actually come and taught, where there is the Dharma, where we have this sort of ability to continue to practice the Dharma. And so it says, thus you will effortlessly accomplish all accumulations of merit and wisdom. And so here we have, when one has created these kinds of seeds, it will allow you to continue to make effort at these at method and wisdom, or the sort of kindness side and our learning. And in that way, all of our activities can become virtuous, as had been discussed before. When a bodhisattva develops this kind of uncontrived bodhicitta, all of their activities then, whether they're like playing around or they're sleeping, become virtuous. And so here again, there is this kind of, we need to think long term. Bodhisattvas accumulate merit for countless eons. And so too, we should strive with this kind of attitude of continuity, of gaining good conditions in the future to be able to continue to accomplish these practices. So continuing, it says, you will have great wealth, a large following, and many attendants. So having all of these kinds of conducive conditions that allow us to continue to practice. And possessing a sharp intelligence, you will be able to ripen the mind streams of many beings. In all lives, such a person will be able to recall past lives, to try to understand the immeasurable advantages that are also described in other sutras. So again, there are great benefits that come from these practices, being able to remember past lives and so forth. But this is a continuity. We're trying to continue this practice by having these good results in this life and in future lives, continuing to increase and develop more and more.
Oh yeah. That and the Chanju Samba Tolam, but the Cholambas and the Society or Chanju Sam Kesar, Society or that in any Tekombalatane, Pakbe Cancer, Satan Butoguris and Gora. Don't buy you Musum to Tosona, the Tolam sing the Torah. Don't buy you Musum to Tolam the Torah. The Tosona and Satan Busse, take by Chambuchan and Satan Butovara, or the Satan Bus or Jikel and Debe, paying Satan Bu to be paying on Grace, Timashedwa. Oh, take the Darinjita, Tabna, Chanju Jesem Tado, Guber, Rimdo, Combana, Sigda, Rimbi Sem Gekushindo, Yonso, Tagbe. Geshe Yeshe Thabkhe, oh Chambada ni Chanju sem Tombanila Soba Combalatane, Rimbi Sembiku, Jimagi Yons Tar do this, Geshe Lumadea, Jimatar do this, or Jumia Yonso Mimber Jewish, Rangi Simki Yonso Mindo, Tabu Yoma, Chama, oh Shirapta, Tamigalitane. So seems to be me, so seems to be mentioned, oh.
Nangda better na goma.
The good sister. He said, you seem to be mentioned to and it talk by Tamala, Combar, Kitty, Tarsimber Gurvana, Jidel and Debe, you see, talk by Trimatata, Trevase, Chuji Ingi, Tiba. Tiba meba shindu stawara togba ase ani karido togba se tiba meche meyuare sar meyuare sar marme lunge shagba shindu Mayor Samar Yura, da Shine, that in the top Seduzako, Tombani Tobote, Mamilung and Mayor and the Kumba, Nashi, Chichik and the Sama Lutadu, and the Neto with the Songudwa. And it's sure Tamje, Tamebe, oh, take on any Mondo, Sheba, Toy Lam Tubas, that's sure Tamje, Tameba, Ramune to be Tombani Sigura, Tombani Musum to Tobe. Lam YouTube, turn down be, Chanju Assembly on Jongos, turn down be Chanju Semsidu, Tonging Musum to talk with Semdilla, turn them Chanju Semsigua, some gentamble, don't do Sanja Coban top the Batalia, Chanju Semdilla, Kunzu Chanju Semsigua, Kunzu Sidu Sanja Yako, Tarsim be, Jelly Church again, Sanja you could mean any, Sam Gigu, Kunzu Chanju Semsiga, Kunzua, turn them Chanju Semsida, talks at the turn down ba. Tongbanida, and the top Jayami at the Tontambe Sanje Kukasura. Rashinam Daka charge you among you Kusura, till he make you Zanko Tandam Chanju Semsigua, or Tonda Sadam Butobe Pay you are this. Teachunangobu Tala, Mikbala, Subayin, the Tishik were Rusuke by or Tishik were Sadam Butob the Sangel, paying your butcher yordo, teach and Tishik were Rusuke by Chanju Sembe Kame Bala Shugba in Bear, Chanju Sembe Lam Kame Bala Shugba in Ben Chidenji, and Roa Tamje Logba Yense, or Chidenji Draw Tamje Logba Yense, Chidembe, Mogi Shamadu Kura Sobatendele, Logba Yense, Chanju Sembe, Chinita, Chigi Yin, Togba Neba in us, or Tichit, but the Chilona. Satang Buto be paying to that tuition or to the Satang Buto be paying Jidel and Debe, Lam Tok with this, Tombani Musum to Tone. The Satang Buto with the paying with this.
So here then it says, in this way, if you meditate on compassion, skillful means, and the awakening mind of bodhicitta, for a long time with great admiration, the mind stream will gradually become thoroughly purified and ripened. So when one has this kind of attitude of bodhicitta, and again, when one first generates bodhicitta, one enters into what we call the path of accumulation, and then through gradual development reaches the path of preparation. But those levels of bodhisattvas, they have this attitude of bodhicitta, but they have not yet directly realized emptiness, and therefore they are still ordinary beings. At the point of the path of seeing, wherein a bodhisattva has a direct realization of emptiness, that is simultaneous with attaining the first ground, the first superior ground. And it is through then proceeding through those various grounds that they will purify all of the various kinds of stains in their mind stream, and be, and so it says their mind stream will gradually become thoroughly purified and ripened. And it is then here we're sort of discussing the kinds of benefits that come of achieving this first ground of becoming an Arya being. And so when one through this process, it says here, like producing fire by rubbing together pieces of wood, you will accomplish your meditation on the perfect reality. And so this continues by explaining that you will thus achieve an extremely clear knowledge of the sphere of phenomena, free from conceptual elaborations, the transcendental wisdom free of the impending nets of conceptual thought. So here, this is the kind of, is describing the wisdom of ultimate bodhicitta. And so the wisdom realizing selflessness, directly realizing emptiness, is what we refer to as ultimate bodhicitta. So one, when one has had the motivation, has the intention to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, when one is having that sort of thought, that thought itself is conventional bodhicitta. But the mind directly realizing emptiness in a being who has generated such a motivation is referred to as ultimate bodhicitta. And so here, this is again sort of holding the body of the Buddha, or the state of Buddhahood, as a goal with that one wants to attain. And actively having that thought of, I want to attain that for the sake of all sentient beings, this is what we would refer to again as conventional bodhicitta. But that direct realization of emptiness, which is actually observing the sort of nature body of a Buddha, and will result in that truth body of a Buddha. This is the what we refer to as ultimate bodhicitta. And so it says then, the wisdom of ultimate bodhicitta is stainless, like an unwavering butter lamp disturbed by the wind. Thus, such a mind is in the entity of ultimate bodhicitta is included within the path of seeing, which apprehends the selfless nature of all phenomena. Through this achievement, you enter into the path focusing on the reality of things, and you are then born in the family of Tathagatas. You enter the stainless state of a bodhisattva, turn away from all wandering births, abide in the suchness of bodhisattvas, and attain the first bodhisattva ground. And so here, again, this is sort of summarizing the benefits that one attains with the attainment of the first ground. And so one turns away from all wandering births, all samsaric births, and abides in this suchness of bodhisattvas. And this is the point at which one has attained an Arya path and the first ground.
Oh, yeah. I change Simba Satang Botoba, you know, she paid the Gaber, such a balance of Kundu, such a Dukasu, paid the Tasa, to the Chiba, the Altrici Pension Gora, or Dylan, Delitan, Kundu Chiba Chavos on Dua. And it ended to Sinila, Big Bear, some day, Papa Langar Shekbale, 10 days, Papa Langar Shekbakapsia, paid the Sunshas, 10 changes Simba. Namje treba meba number meto banil jugosa tongbani ngusum to toba tonlam to do sa ani treba thamje de tre kunzu ji treba da temba trebe nawala soba te thamje de trebe number meto be tongbani ngusum to tobe ani shilen judo de sa tonlam to do sungora chanju semba namje treba meba number meto be meto banil jugosa ne mebe trebe sala ne mebe wange Jubar number Shagos, Solam down, Solam Nibutula, Mebe Chebe Sasigua, Mebe Chebe Salane, Mebe Wange, Juba number Shagos, Tombanila Sobangusum to Togo Marto, Mebe Wange, Jugudesembra. One ban Duce Benemain, Musum to go to Chebati, Homaris, Socho Ginegas, Tolam Tomni, Tombanusum to Odessa. You see the Jomar Junani? When the show by Indies, Tomba Tolam Tosonani, Tolam Tosoni, sitting on the Jonah Tombani, Musum to talk while I shook by the assembly. The Dara Satambola shook by the Chi Combe Lamla, and Jidel and Debata, the Chela Tobe, she Niji, Shirab Tab Combe, Rimji, Combe Pambar Sawata, the name of Comlam to the Shagua. There are Satambola Suba Tesera, Chi Combe Lamla, didn't come to Grace, Tonam Gachella Saniba, La Soba Sumba Shiba Panchadura, didn't come Lamse. Jidel and Debata, Chela Tobe, Yishi, Chetobi, she said, Yamsha Chela Tobe, Shinji. Shirab da Tab Comba, Rimji, Treva, Rimji Combe, Pambar Savetaba. I don't buy it over Shirab, Tab Nigalatane, and Nick Comlangi Negos, Rimji Comne, Comlan, Saniba Sumba Shibanga, Sachu about to trade over this on Gudwa. Combe Rimji, Combe Pambar Save Triba. Mando, Combe Pambar Save Triba, Combe Pambar Save Triba. Look at Tiba Travel, Che Tower, a Chambechera, Comba, Yomo Tower to the Panze, Sachu Patia to Grisura. Oh, you then Caber, Coma, Matobe, Sawa, Mama, you also saw a Tishibe, Ishigi Pala Shune, Tamje Kimbanyi, Jasur Juche. Comba also Jurвечer, Big Paria, Top Day, oh, the Koba Ingira, Koba also Jurвечer, 미보야 톱데 대달 림기 대달 림바 코나르 심기 교용수 딱바라 박발랑가르 색발해야 까체데세 다데 림비에니 가서래 곰람 사주 림기 트레반도 그래서 대세제가 롱데 장도 사주 림기 트레야 톱도 그래서 디 롱카르 장도세나 파바 공방에 반제바 레야 데 송샤세 랑가르 색발해야 송샤세 네 디오데 파바 공방에 반제바 레야 림기 사 공마 남수 sertaburu sem number ani pon lana meba yada ba sobe chamju ji pa do ngombar soba sang jawo she song so ta ser rimji tme chamba na shi pi tar tamana shi ni semji ken kanga te rimji ya chane rimji ani sa koma sa ni so ba shi ba ngaba to sa chu pa do ya to do re so do sertabu sem number number pongwa se twento pa tar da paniro lana meba yada ba sobe chanju ji pa do ngombar soba chang jawo se ta tatu sangje be pen se do sangje to be pen so do ya tipo de chi se
So here, then again, this it continues by saying, again, we've gone through the sort of benefits that come from having attained the first ground. And this is explained in more detail so we can find the details, more details of these advantages, the benefits that we see of attaining the various grounds in other texts, such as the 10 spiritual levels. So this is how meditative stabilization focusing on suchness is taught in the Descent into Lanka Arya Sutra. And this is how bodhisattvas enter the non-conceptual meditation free from elaborations. So here again, this is taught and explained that one progresses sequentially through these stages, and we can look to these sources for more detail. It continues here by explaining that those in the engaging through aspiration level are said to engage through thought and not through pure application. Once that wisdom is evolved, one enters this level. So those in the engaging through aspiration level, this is referring to those bodhisattvas who are still on the path of accumulation and the path of preparation. These are aspirational levels because they don't yet have a direct realization of emptiness. They know only through a kind of conceptual mode the meaning of emptiness. And at the point of the path of seeing, wherein one has this direct realization of emptiness, then one enters into that path of seeing and simultaneously attains the first ground. And so in this way, then it continues sequentially by explaining the kind of benefits of the path of meditation, wherein one then proceeds to go through the second, third, fourth, and so on grounds. And so it says then, once that wisdom is evolved, as in one has had a direct realization, one enters the level of the path of seeing. And then once one has achieved the path of seeing in the first ground, in this way, a person who has entered the first level later on the path of meditation familiarizes him or herself with the two wisdoms of the transcendental state and the subsequent wisdom and skillful means. In this way, he gradually purifies the subtlest accumulation of obscurations that are the object of the path of purification of the path of meditation. So again, this is something where one is developing one's method and wisdom more and more, such that one is subsequently sort of in sequence eliminating the more and more subtle kind of obscurations that are to be eliminated on each of the various grounds, all the way up until Buddhahood, when one has eliminated the kind of obscurations of the 10th ground and then attains omniscience. And so this is something that is done in stages. So again, in order to achieve higher qualities, he thoroughly purifies the lower spiritual level. All purposes and objectives are completely fulfilled by entering the transcendental wisdom of the Tathagatas and by entering the ocean of omniscience. thoughts. In this way, by gradual practice, the mind stream is thoroughly purified. So the Descent into Lanka Arya Sutra gives an explanation of this. And this is also explained, as will come below, in the Unraveling of the Thought Sutra. And again, here, when one achieves a direct realization of emptiness, one no longer has in one's meditative equipoise any kind of appearances, conventional appearances or appearances of true existence. And then from that point, one is going to proceed in stages through the various grounds and through the path of meditation and the path of no more learning and so forth, to remove more and more subtle kind of obscurations until one reaches enters the ocean of omniscience. And so as the quotation from the Unraveling the Thought it reads, it says, in order to achieve those higher levels, the mind should be purified just as you refine gold until you realize the unsurpassed, complete, perfect awakening. So this is something that needs to be done in stages. In the way one purifies gold, one proceeds by doing certain steps in a sequence in order to get to that refined kind of gold. And so too, when it comes to complete, unsurpassed, complete, perfect awakening, one needs to proceed in stages. And here, the last section of this is describing kind of the benefits of Buddhahood, the benefits of omniscience.
Tamje Kimba Niji, Kazur, Shubana, Yishingi, Nobutabur, Simjan Tata, Nyawar Sove, Yundenji, Pumbutane, Dan, Wenji Mulam Jin Jebu, Yoban Zes, or the Sanje Yokovan Tomna, anything they Yunde or the Tobe should be back with us. Tamje Kimba Niji, Kazur, Shubana, Sanje Kovan Tosun Sungura, Yishingi Nobutabu, Simjan Tata, Nyawar Sove, Yundenji Pumba. Singing the Abu Dhabi Telemalam Tamna and the sending the Nella Soba Tamja Drew by Shindo, or Sanjay Komatosona, and it was thinking the summer Tamja over the Esa. Teta was some gentata, Yavara Soya, Yandanji Pumbutani, then when the Malam Jin Drebu Yavan Zaz, Tanganji, Tambuni took it in the Malam Jin Simja Tamja to get in the Euro show Sanjay Komantoba Shose. Sanjay Jabba Jagan Tamja Yorton Malam Jagora, Hoti, Drebuti, Nimonton Jabba Resora. Tuji Chimbi Rashito and Jurusa. This is Rani Tarshim Basamaiba, Simjan Tamja Tunga, the trend to Shangi Tungi, Tuji Chimbi Shamadu Turba Desorto. Hinji Truba, Tub, not so Batata and Dance. That's Simjan Trouble Sankesona, and it's Java Zaba conditions Jaconako, Hinji Truba, Bezura, Walato Mekoba, about to sometimes to this Ungora. Hinji Truba. Tub not so tante. Triba Pato Meba, Tage, Draw Malube, then number Tamje and Jesse. And this Sanjay said you could to drill a Toba matter. Some general color can do you Triba, Rabat and Drew Tiny. And the guys made a lot of Lama Soba Kanda can't Triba, Konazu Rick to Timber and any, some general part of Zeto Grace of the Tuji Chamber and shit on the Juro Ligi Triba. Tub shot on it there. And if Triba Pato may batag draw my lubeton, number Tamjan is there. And you then put some sober Maluba, Rabbi, Tarishim Barney Jurse, you then Kimber, you then Landur Guinea Tamja Kimber Tarshimber. Say you then Tarshimber. Sanjay and Zaba can't say Rani can go subject to a country stroke when a troop to Gachare. Diana Simjang and Gona con Zaba de Truba, no to Roma Chaba Teletroop to Gumato, some Koran Tarship in Garazo Mune, Namjustiva, Sanjay Yandre check to the water, another consac alumana, and you have taken your matter, cheers your matter. When a Garazo Pumbura to Rapsin and Ajuto single the consecrate chairman to Kashig and Amjo Toto, Mato, Chimato, this one is the Simjan Koran. 대단 저 심전도 저 뉴런 차버트 졸이야 대단 되는 자바자 토고도 무슨 소바 가는지 연된 무슨 소바 말이 바랍디 타르신반에 겨 바샤다 제베 제베 견타다 세네 그래서 주바바도 매바 어레 주바바도 매바 타긴 로 말이 베터 넘버 탐제네 제세 연된 무슨 소바 말이 바랍디 타르신반에 겨르체 아니 바샤다 제베 예베 주마타다 세네세 녀모텔에 녀집셔라 이 바샤들 이 슈르셔라 띵에만 섬기텐도 거데베 슈르셔라 어텔이야 바샤스를 텔에 시집시도 시제집셔라 아 동반이 탑던 시로니가 덴베코는 동반이 공공공도 아니 당진다 텐지 매바 마세티 바샤다 제바세소나 드바니 방식거도 니 시베교 강가 좋은도래 탐제 셀 통계 시 통계 샤요도 근데 무슨 소바 말로바 rabbi 타르신반에 줄세 바샤다 제베 예베 쯤마타다 세네세 빠네스 거라 매브샤네 심쟁이 감비 태 똑바로 슈바인베 심쟁이 감 탐매바나시 네 조에 된제고 주트나서 조에 된제도 우리 슈바인바 똑바다 덴베 산제 좀 된데 연대 타다게 종네라 종네라 대바기라 연대의 용수 주베셔 당이 탐제기 매버샤오세다 산제 고반 토베치도 대대비 산제 고반 등가라서 토베치도 매버샤고데 송구도 좀 된데 연대 타다게 종네라 대바기 연대의 용수 주베셔 당이 탐제기 매버샤오세 단디 가셔우르나 단다수 튜니셰도아 튜네 도르드네스 와라타 데베나 좀 된데긴 되게도스 아초도로 좀 된데게 되게도 탐제kimbe 시테니 닝지 자왈레 중앙에스 탐제kimbe 시테 담보 고추서데 닝지된 고추고도 사와 닝지 전부도 개시슈에 달시사소마보 닝지 자왈레 중앙에스 장주기 선비 교례 중에서 닝지 정보요나 아니 심지어 탐제 동에다 드라이버 자베 시동아 근데 제 통계의 강사진 교르고 삼네 산계지 고반 토베치도 근데 탑다 실험 얘기를 장바 개반에 개베버 장바 제거도 탐제 캠베 시 근데 닝지래 중앙에 장주기 선비 교례 중앙에서 아니 탑게 타르친바 인도세 동반이 또베 시르라 소바토조 산게지 고반 토베 바두야 로야데 탑지 장주 셈라 소바 테조 심베코네니 타르심바 조르고레세 셰카차도세 단데네 마카리셰 고레세나 이셔로 랑르 차와 담바셰 다두 담바 차도 야 담바 차도 라소 지메 타시네세 ora kansa chebase tezu shenlia teni kibu tambal so tezulia chado shela so ba tezuba tasin mebe yesigora yonde nambi mengum chui sonda taase ani shendal chado ma che yonde ge jangye che de ngomba meba tai jamzu na shiri jamzu na chukaje chine ya kouri ma to chi chutam mo go se chi yo marto yonde nambi mengum 추이 소단 다세 넘버 세네 레버시에 남 진지 데세 넘버 세네 단도 컨디션에 제주 송셔부터 강가 레버시에 남 진지 데세 넘버 세네 시럽게 넘버 세에 코네 소소 삼부터 셔버시 고데스 담마도 소소 자도 알아 송셔부터 넘버 세네 레버시에 남 진지 데세 ngangba rabge chule oman lembashesa ta ngangba tu choti ge ba tzobe chuna roma te shana ko oma te tung chudi shasha wisara o te inde ko kya kanga pa shasha ne ningbu lemba soso ko ya de ngangba chule oma lemba ta rang de ba tang do long shasa tarba tamje ke ba tobje yede do tang do lang go de se sungudwa Teda vena kenam Geshe. Ani Sholung Trugbe Ringbola, Sholung Trugi Ringbola, Chosolove, Semdipa, Cholunche, somebody pap on Hosagora. Shibale Legusheba, Tamje Lower, Conarchas. Shengen de Chiba Sosoki na te Sheshabe, Shesha de, young Dagbajere, the Donatilango, Sungora, Tamje Lama Conachase. Chagdangi Wangiti, Condusher, Yuxusher, Tiganzuru, Tembara set and Lichigo Masungora. Chagdan Meba says a Kebatan Sosoki, Susha, and a young Dagwadi, young Dagwin Balango, the Esse. Oh, until it's Cholung Chia, Marese. Shibale, Lekbarisi, Lekshepa, Tamje. Lama konar chas tidigwa tini tidune shebe suna mo ta ngo aterda di ngo chigore kondu shesembe kesa sanje ko ba to be chidu simje tamje to ngenge sanje su gyore che chidu ngo gyore tedar ume lam shebe ta ge sunam kaunto ba ume tongba ni ge lam she so sanju semle so ba she do otu sama shebe ta ge sunam ka je to ba ina ya ge kewo malu ba Ume lamne toba shoso, Tongbani Musum to Tone, Sanji Komatoya, Tongbani, Thabkhe Simbe Kone, Tongbani Musum to Toba Toba Shose. Kombe Rimba Ajara Kamashile, Parton Zeba, Tatambo Kurim Tambuche, Parton Zeba Kurim Nibadira, Tama Kurim Tama Yorda, Kurim Sumginane. Ajara Kamashile, Zebabo, Loban Kamashile, Zeba Sose. Jagari Kembo Jana Warmata. And lots of our body city, Gurjin, should tell about us. Or take you and get lots of what the communists would do. How do you? Oh, yeah, teach you love here. Oh, yeah. Loyalty, me.
Yeah, so here, then again, it's sort of making a plea for us to make an effort at this. So it says here, describing kind of the qualities of omniscience, of attaining Buddhahood. It is encouraging us to make effort at this. If you continue to develop these kinds of qualities, then one is able to eventually attain the state of Buddhahood. So it says here, entering the ocean of omniscience, you possess impeccable jewel-like qualities to sustain sentient beings, and these fulfill your previous prayers. So if one attains the state of Buddhahood, Buddhas are like a wish-fulfilling jewel. They are working solely for the benefit of sentient beings. And so like the way that if you would make a prayer or wish for something on this sort of magical wish-fulfilling jewel, and it would give you whatever you wanted, so too with bodhisattvas. They are working solely for the benefit of other sentient beings. And so the results that come from this attitude of wishing to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings includes this, that the individual then becomes the embodiment of compassion, possessing various skillful means that function spontaneously and work in various emanations in the interests of all wandering beings. So here, the individual becomes this embodiment of compassion, working for sentient beings, like working in accordance with the various needs of sentient beings. We have different dispositions, and there are certain things that are proper for different types of beings. And Buddhas, then once they have achieved this state, no longer need to have any sort of the coarse kind of effort that we would have to make in order to work for others or do things that are beneficial, but rather have this kind of spontaneous type of skillful means. And they work in various emanations in the interests of wandering beings. So again, this is something that's describing the kind of and I'll just continue by saying that, reading the text, that in addition, all marvelous attributes are perfected with total elimination of defilements and their latencies. All Buddhas abide to help every sentient being. So a Buddha is one who has perfected all of these qualities, perfected his or her knowledge such that they know everything that is to be adopted and abandoned, all the sort of mode and variety of phenomena. They have perfected their love, brought it to its sort of full completion, as well as their ability. And their ability is being able to help beings in accordance with their needs. They teach in ways that are suitable to various vessels. Again, it's described like we can, if we don't have a sort of faith in the Buddha's teachings, or we don't have the proper kinds of disposition to be benefited by it, it's like if you have a hook, but you have no sort of hole for that to catch onto. We need to have a way to connect with the Buddha's teachings properly, having this kind of faith from our side, or also sort of have the proper disposition to be able to benefit from that particular teaching. And so here, again, with this regard to with total elimination of all defilements and their latencies. So here, when one has eliminated the afflictive obscurations, there are still sort of those latent tendencies that are our obscurations to omniscience, those knowledge obscurations. And those can be removed. And once we have removed those kinds of imprints, then one attains the full awakening of Buddhahood. And so this, again, is referring to the fact that they have gotten rid of not just the defilements, our various afflictions, but also any latent tendencies, and have this ability then to benefit every sentient being, having perfected these qualities of wisdom, love, ability, and so forth. And so through, it says, through such realization, generate faith in the Buddhas, the source of all wonderful knowledge and qualities. Everyone should endeavor to actualize these qualities. So reflecting on the various qualities of the Buddhas, one should generate faith, generate this kind of understanding that this is something that we would want to attain. And it's having that sort of admiring faith, and as well as the sort of striving faith that says, I want to attain that for myself, or attain that for others, that leads us to really make an effort in these things. And so based upon seeing these qualities, everyone should endeavor to actualize them. And so in summary, the Buddha thus said, the omniscient transcendental wisdom is produced with compassion as its root, the awakening mind of bodhicitta as its cause, and is perfected by skillful means. So great compassion, this compassion wishing to free all sentient beings from their sufferings, acts as like the root, the cause then of one's striving to develop this transcendental wisdom, is this awakening mind of bodhicitta. And it's brought to its completion by skillful means. When one strives for a direct realization of emptiness, held by that kind of love and compassion for sentient beings, this is then brought to completion. One attains the state of Buddhahood. So then we have here a kind of a verse that says, the wise distance themselves from jealousy and other stains. Their thirst for knowledge is unquenchable like an ocean. So those who are wise should distance themselves from anything like any kind of stains, especially some sort of like jealousy of being jealous of the qualities of others. And rather, they should have this kind of thirst for knowledge that is unquenchable, in the way that no matter how much water you add to an ocean, its thirst is never quenched. And so here it continues saying, they retain only what is proper through discrimination, just like swans extracting milk from water. So here it said that swans are able to just take up the milk. Even if milk and water are mixed together, they can just extract the milk. And so thus, scholars should distance themselves from divisive attitudes and bigotry. Here, they don't get sort of, a bodhisattva doesn't get caught up in their own aims. They're doing these kinds of practices, extracting the essence with this sort of attitude of altruism, of wanting to benefit others. And then even from a child, good words are received. So here we should have a sort of discrimination that allows us to see what is good advice, even if the speaker is an ordinary being, or even if the speaker is a child. If what they are saying is correct, is logical, then we should accept it. We shouldn't sort of fall into divisiveness or just thinking like, oh, this is right because it's my side, this kind of bigotry and divisive attitudes, but rather recognize that even from a child, good words are received. And then it turns to a dedication that says, whatever merit I derive with exposition of this middle path, I dedicate for all beings to actualize the middle path. So here again, this is making a dedication with this aspiration of bodhicitta, saying that whatever sort of merit I have derived from explaining this kind of path, may it go toward all sentient beings being able to actualize that path. And here then in the colophon, it says, the middle section of the stages of meditation by Acharya Kamalashila is here completed. So there's a sort of preliminary, the middle, and then there's a final one. And this was translated and edited in Tibetan by the Indian abbot Prajnavarma and the monk Geshe Yeshe. And then we have the kind of English translation that follows.
Oh, that in direction, it's awesome. Oh, that and that Kasura, I just stand up. Oh, Korean Parvati, some get to that road, the Tambu Tambu, Gabu Sambush Shwete, Hashangi Atawashidua. They combat or come to
Sorry, Katrina, could you convey that the mala is going over the speaker?
Tingwa the
Oh, yeah, I thought that I saw that. Tanda did some Kubati, Kubati. She don't have to Mitsul Karsurata. Koyas and Bundu Tambu Yonsadi, Susanga, Samsangati, Rama, the Shibichi, or some Tangiora, Ketchum Shibichi, Senda Suchi, the Madarachi. Any Nadi Chipa, Sobupasha, Sempasha, and Twachili Shendachi, Nalot Bachil, Judan get a chip, so this door. Kevangashi, Tutangashi, Sigor, and Nagitas, and Nalo de Daye, the May Missy, Missy Kagachi, Metaway Sugiora, or Tin Dabador, Samlin Dale, and Dabadua, Tin Dabodiciore. Rawa Taji. They shook Chamber, I said they shook Chamber, Silent Deverish. I shook Chamber, should I do any teleten? Nachose, Nas and Nachose, Shenchose. And the case you Mamuchigua. Some jelly short of Nietzsche or tradition. In the Kongazulu Kasura, Chadana Sovereign Yamuki, the Chi over to the Kigiora. You don't want a ton, you don't want a ton, so now draw the Medora. Or today, Tony, until the Chadana some Kigiora. Some Lukiati. Or T in this attack, the map so good, Chadana sober. There's a map so good. Tipan Guyore, Tipan the Tarwato Guyoro. Or the map so good. Cashes and all the corner, Yellow Machine Abudes. So that Rejala Soba to Yellow Cheted any Cashel Shabaji, Cashel Conto Jenga, Chado, Kanga Tramado, Yamokanga Kajibres on Gura. This on the Chia Yellow Machine Abudes, Hashan Tawatira. Chia Yellow Machine Computation. Quando tungo maramato ne chagwa da kondo gajet yo mare tende deshan ne paruchil kona so nyamo so ne tarpa top do sanje do re so biara o ti digma rese sanje balya te kan so da o tab da shirab ni ga ko dese kumzu be che do pe mena kom tanda yele ma che ne ya yele che so ne ya nyamo che ngura Il Mache capite con il Mache Tera. I le cesso ne manasera che ungura. O ti dico di il Mache Bicangi, Tarma top to Mare Sungda. Anna Caraco resone, il Chebati, you to your Conganzo, no one sit by your Marese. Around the ton and sit by your mare. Marajo Rang in a dra, Yido and the Yido Tradani Karina, or Koran Zugutusa Yorache. She tone pignal, you Koran when a round Langaranga Yodas and get a two years and do some good. In a tender matter. Koran Maenge, Sasha, and so some Samutan, oh, Tico, Yawomidoa, some metis, some Yido Taguara, Toya, Yuli Taguato. Kashelo Yawushibi do something you couldn't when she said the near Yubestorici. Cavados and Dirisha, Chibangonetanici, near Yubestorici, Tioma Risugora. That Tombani Congo esse. You couldn't run around to Yoba, Rangune Yoba Jinduza, and the Rangune Yido, the Yidomeo, the Rangune, and the other Naya said to the Samakundu, and the Shenja Sukshabukiata, and then Debe Yuta, Medebe Yula Tawaki to Yoga esse. Temper Matuba, Rangun Tomba Comcore. Then the Debar Joan some to your race. Consumer Chawach and get your race. The man say your mother's. Then the Debar Joan some to your race. Comambo to Mainga Mambo to Russia, and tell it in Palo Patasha, but the Tawachasha your day. But on other time, I see you young women to Rawan to Trubati your mat. And there's some conning your Mochondura. Society ko Sogodan, Semdan, Sorota, Dushita, and Soso Soguna, Riverdan, Trada, and it's how Chusita, Udan to Kangala, Turgeon joining us and get some potato. Around some the cheat to Vashan and Soso, some Koda. The young Shane Yomara. The Sukanga, Ruruch, and any to do young garage, Sembi Soya to do Yosun to do Yon, the Yaguresha Remeduse. So than to see that took like a chavity, tag like a chavity shagua. Matoko Rawan Chitubachigo Marato. Oti Rangune Tribe Tomba Comgore, Yila Mechiba Sambi, Yamodo to Mares, teach shake doa, or the teacher son. Duchess.
So this then completes the text of Kamalashila's middle stages of meditation. And this again was originally taught by Kamalashila, given by Kamalashila in order to argue against the kind of view of Hashang Mohoyen that would say that really the way that we get out of our suffering is just by not engaging mentally, by sort of stopping any kind of mental engagement or mental activity. And that's how we're able to be freed from our afflictions and our suffering. So here, we all have this kind of sense of an I or a self, something that is like autonomous, set up from its own side. And based upon that sense of like a real I that exists in its own right, we hold that I as important and so forth. And we sort of engage in various karmas. Now, there are some various sort of tenet holders, philosophical thinkers that are convinced that there is such a self, something that is like a permanent soul or self within our various aggregates. Although, again, that's something that is refuted with various logic. But once we have this sense of I, like an autonomous, really existing I, there comes with that a sense of mine. And we think about like my side, my family, my things, and so forth. And it is this kind of thinking that leads us to then engage in various karma. We give rise to afflictions and we create karma. So when we interact with external objects, we see that they give rise to our various kinds of afflictions. And so in order to remove our attachment and hatred, the sort of reactions that we have to those objects. Again, Hashang's theory is that we just, all of those afflictions come from mental activity. And so if we were to just not think of anything at all, if we were to just cease mental activity, then we could stop all of our various afflictions. They would just sort of like expire or be gone because they don't have any sort of objects to interact with. So this kind of view takes it that, well, if we want to remove our various afflictions, all we have to do is just sort of mentally disengage. But that's not really how we are able to eliminate our various afflictions. When we begin to, we actually have to use our conceptuality in order to come to a proper kind of understanding, an understanding that will undermine the way that we normally grasp at things as truly existent. So phenomena, objects, ourself appear to us as though they were really truly existent, like from their own side, as if there's something that we could point to as being that thing, whether it is ourself or any other kind of object, something that's like not dependent upon our mentally labeling it, or not dependent on our parts, on its parts, and so forth. And so if it were the case that objects existed in this way, then it wouldn't be possible, as we see is the case, that people would have different views of one object. Sometimes people see one thing as pleasant, like some people will view a person as their friend, and others will view that same person as an enemy. And so it's not the case that something can exist from its own side, in its own right, in that way, when we see that it's not perceived the same by all parties. So here we have this strong sense that things are that things are truly existent, but when we search for such a thing, we can't find it. That doesn't mean, though, that phenomena as dependent originations are not existent. We have these dependent origination. Things come about, they're functional and so forth, but they don't exist in the way that they appear to us. So we have this kind of sense that, like, especially when it comes to ourself, that are like our own aggregates, there's got to be a self somewhere in that. We look through like our various components, and it seems like, well, our flesh and our blood and our bones, this thing is really truly existent like that. But when we begin to and we experience suffering and so forth on the basis of these aggregates that we have taken up, but when we begin to examine and really try to search for the thing as it appears to us, we find that we can't actually locate such a thing. And so here, this kind of conceptual thinking, this kind of analysis and investigation is necessary to come to the proper kind of understanding of emptiness that's able to undermine our suffering in the way that just mentally stopping activity is unable to.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's Kimba children serve something like so what to call Mares, company Tona says, Sigurano, or Tendre Mares, Kimba children serve someday to go race, Simja Yore, Simja to imagine now Yore, Simja to get and Travashia Yore, or Tea in this uncle. There's now an ancient and Barrio Marite, Simja Tombani Tona, Ramune Truba, Rawan to Truba Tombato or the Mato. So I never married tension to Simjan Yore, Tongian Yore, Ra. This one called Jimba children Savala Soba Tetu called Ese. There's a consup them, but now and I sit them by Mare. I don't know some now and I sit them by your mother. I don't reach it to Trotan and Tongiora. Your mother, they call Chawach and Geshe Yore. They do Chawach and Geshe, never can get a panton get on. They do charge and get your order, so to so what is it? Not as hard to do against you. What do you order is a king did so? There's a kunzuk them bas or she namsha. Kunzuk them, but there your order is. King has a ton and shit them by Mare, don't I bet them but the Mare. But as a tongue, I should do one and nearly tattoo the Mare. Or tell a shando. Round and as a tongue round to what you told you at the Tio Mare. Mamboji la tenjin derne te de pata shaba samchi yor mato saga dronne rae chi yoshi yo mare singo condition sigora te de tanta beten bas na shi nam sha de kunzu chi ta tanta beten bas ni yore ti chimba chudin soba samde ninji chembula soba tezu kangati tabgi chate yogores joy simje me ni so me ta menane ninji chembu yongu mardo English women change some call Marto, which is a tub chatting about the call the essay. The Nazu Lord hanging on a tub, Chunju Chambas or Tiaketan, some Jatamjel by Kaviagi, Nirin Mabas, summer by Kavia Gashertan, Tabgi chatting call the essay. Or Tiliatane. Anasi, don't bet them but only to be sure of the call. Then by nature they call the essay. The Koya Karesana, she temper Yesera. She lay her Kunzube temperature down, turned and bet temperature New Yora. She temper Yes. Lam Tapsi Yes. This on the top and shit of New Yore. Turned and bet temper don't get the shit of the turned and nearly Tadu don't get it. The Kunzube church on the Atazulia, Tungenya Yore, Tawatoya Yorete, Tunga the Gender Yitsawada, Jambada Ninja, Chaju, some sober Tezuko Yorda. She temper Lam Tapsi Yes. I chimba sutum the service and gentleman and taught the Mogochara. Taught the Akore, share of the Akore, Sungora, Lam Tapshin Nise. Debuku Nise, Jimmo Sanje, Koban to do Sanjay, Sudan, Tomba Ganja Samlutan Kage Manane, Yendo Gesso, Sanjay, and the Kashimato. Sanjay, Sunan, Shingam Pusum Soba, Roa, and the Suku Pusum Soba, Sansam, the pages and Butcher. Simply a church on Tumge. Take a nail, Lu Longe, Tandanga Ransula, Tessa, Nay, or the Lu or the Longe, or she or Trugutua. Then you are Tarshin, when they put some over China, Shingan put some over Yogura. Lu put some over Longe over Kulas over to the Yorno. Or tea in the Zanko Kasura. She, Dagbe Shingam da, Telesunge Sangeta, Tea and then the Sungi and Della Soba. Today you was a Sanjay, you take Gula Labgura. Take Gula Kag and Malab City, you have your mardo. Chok the Gurba, simply in a Pijana Yungua. Chilo Jungobochi in a co Pujon legend, Putuchimba, the Yashures. Details to the Yanimambochi Chiadua. Rebuching in a Chala in a Chilo Nobolea. Shindo is in a Koyaburish Yanimambochi Adua. Same general, Lu Yang Mambo do it, and then I told her to do that. I think there's a Milikana, Nikashi, never the ship to the calendar. Damada Yandua, Tidashi, Narazo told her, member Shingam, Telehagba, Puduchimba, Puduchu and Shingam, Puduchim, Puduchimba, Sanjay Kovala, so what is your race from Gora? Or T. You're not Jula Labora, this one good. Kuching but to them serve something like Sobola Malona, and then David Pusnos of Yungumara. Then I'm going to take one member, she's Chilore. Touch on the Topsona. And it's all men to she men by the end of a storage charter, shaking English, Sigora. Or the Sanjay did the dressing the Nika Magumji, you shall not take your mother. Sanjay Shingan persons of a name, persons of a lupus, longe persons of a court persons of a cookie. Chimbatuti, Chabani, Chanju, Sembless of what is called this order. This one is a sheet and Banya Lam Tapsi Nisi. Debuku Nisi. Debuku Nikares, Chita Debutelia, Sanja Korang took the same day. Same day Tamja Kimba, Mishibia Momba Tamja the Trek, Tamja the Travachikura. No more say, Mishibia Momba say, Raw. So on it, long to the net Tamja Musum the King get Chagura. And the Kyan Ganga Panko Yara. Shiba Kanga Shen Shengura, did he? Yomo by Shiba Tagbe Tagba. She's a time to Shiba Shiba. Two ditira. Rebukuni Suda. Sukushi doesn't. So we young gang good as you are. Shugusu doesn't simply met Tagba at the same time as Shimpatelia. Shugusu, Shishuguta. Or in the Rebuku Nikugiana, do Tapsi Nikore, Ra Tapsi Nikugina, Lamtene, a sheet and vanilla of water, and Namshak or the essay. Teach you what is you love ya? Come on to treasures.
So here, then, one needs to have then the method side. One needs to engage in the practices of generosity and ethics and patience and meditative concentration and so forth in order to reach the kind of result that we are striving for. So here, we have to recognize the level of these two truths, that although phenomena, like say beings, do not exist exist as they appear, suffering beings do exist. It's not as though these kind of suffering beings are totally non-existent. It's just that things like various objects don't exist as they directly appear to us, but we can speak about there being harm and benefit, that things have functionality, that cause and effect is still functional. And so here, when it comes to the kind of engagement with the method side, this acts as the cause for our attaining the form body of a Buddha. And so here, the fact that things conventionally exist, and based on that conventional existence are various practices of generosity and ethics and so forth, are what act as the kind of cause for the form body of a Buddha. And then the side of the fact that things don't actually exist in the way that they appear to us, the fact that when we search for something, whatever kind of object it is, we can't actually find that thing within its basis of designation. We can't point to anything that actually exists in the way that it appears to us. This is the kind of ultimate level of truth. And so we need both of these together. We often talk about there being the sort of basis, the path, and the result. And the foundation, the basis that of practice is these two truths, conventional and ultimate. And conventional truth kind of aligns with the method side of the path. So again, the sort of basis, we have the two truths, and then the path, one has method and wisdom. And so here, again, based upon a proper understanding of the two truths, one doesn't, when you say here that there's no form and no sound and no smell and so forth, one doesn't think that those things are totally non-existent. So one doesn't therefore give up this method side. One definitely needs to engage in this. So we need both truths and both method and wisdom. Again, the method kind of side is something, as well as the wisdom side, but the method side in terms of love and compassion, these are things that we already have as qualities, but we need to increase them and develop them more and more. And so again, when it comes to this foundation, it's an understanding of the presentation of the two truths, ultimate and conventional. And then on the path, the way that one actually engages is through the practices of method and wisdom. And so here, the sort of method side acknowledges that there are suffering beings who conventionally exist. And it's also a way to alleviate that kind of suffering that beings experience. If it were the case that things were just totally non-existent, then why would one be making this kind of effort? So based upon that proper understanding of the foundation or the basis, one engages in these two, the paths of method and wisdom, which results in these two Buddha bodies. So when we talk about the resulting Buddha body, they are described as being abiding in pure lands with sort of all of these excellent qualities, all of these excellent characteristics, the various marks and signs on a Buddha's body. And this is something that needs to have the proper kind of cause to come about. So even when we talk about like external things, there are very varying levels of quality of various objects. Things can be well made or not well made, and it's really based upon the kind of causes that went into that. So when we are talking about the sort of most excellent, marvelous results of Buddhahood, of this being who has developed fully all good qualities, this is something where they have to train in all of these causes in order to actualize that result. Unlike an arhat, who once they have eliminated their afflictive obscuration, sort of like disappear into this sort of meld into the sphere of phenomena, a bodhisattva is actively working for the benefit of others. There is the sort of side of the Buddha's truth body. Their minds being free from all kinds of lack of knowledge and from all of their afflictions, that directly knows all points to be adopted and abandoned, that kind of purity of mind, that is developed through the cause of wisdom. And then we have the sort of form body, the excellent form that a Buddha shows, that a Buddha displays to other sentient beings in order to bring about their benefits. And this can be accompanied by like having a pure realm and a pure entourage or retinue and so forth. And if we want to achieve those, one then needs to train in the proper causes, which means that we need both method and wisdom.
Oh yeah, this one dako karsoda. Sanje chum den jiten kan lu pa ne. Ne temba shi chu song gu do. Den dong e pa ba temba wa chi dang ara zu tanda. De sa ne da lu da long ju to zo tar chi ba ke ma re se. Dong e ge rong xin che mang bu de se. Ro. En de ya chu yo de tip se na di se ya yo de se. Ne gok ba da lam la so ba te zu kom ne tar wa to ya yo re song gu do. O te zu song sha ba te zu kanga. Rigbe tuye yo do. 다시 고송샤 메바체 우리 세교 말도 나 디제 탐제 메다버스 추억한 거 줄을 때는 기억으로 남버셔나 그냥 때는 기억으로 내 이나라 류나라 롱주 이나라 티도 카리나 나라주 디도 당 나라주 양이 카르도 마도 직대 제바보 셴다지 수 용구요나 나주 제게 메도아 그러나 투지시 다케랑 가르스나 서로서 대규를 마도 나주 dak바는 시리에 소래 분버스나스 가유스나스 가르스나스 성계제 소샤라 아주 내가 개체면도와 남베 티켈링게 말이 현대지 성계가 말이시고라 랑게 티두다 랑게 류다 상에다 내류서마 규단 깨를 깨고래서 규단 깨데 소수 티두기 규단 깨데 소수사고래시고라 소수단 제와데 현대지 티두기 내가지 제정 간술 대화 동의 용신 말와 랑게 대화 동의데 소수 레치단데 천대를 가라서 하고도 소소래 야구체 로도 야구체 야구 여름 전이 야가 용도 소소 도게시 제대는 그 도가 대 용대도 소소 레사네 야구 레 로종체 이게 뒤 깔레게 베스체네 레 야구사네 야르야 야르도 레레텐 저비케기 와라 레 두자 제베네 텔레텐이 체마 도가 용도 레enge balteni 저비총도 무슨 조그데 쳐 천대리야 천디 레 상부체나 제부 상부 용야 여보다 레enge 버체네 제부 개버부터 무슨 게 조그데 쳐 가지고 하고 그래 어디나시 소수 가리나 소수 류데 샤베네 셈데 도니아 셈데 체마고 공시 가리네 티나시 쳔도네 레레테네 고양 겨할라한테 티도 용고 하라 뒤에도 두제 탐제 미다바인데 규단 깽게 때는 교환 줘야 요래 대송대 규단 깽게 때는 고추 생계시나 네 딱바다 아시라 템보시라 용해지 요 말도 어때인데 템바시라 소바테도 송바데 뭐베 내주단 템바게 최지 송게 왔다 지다 고출로 최송게 망부 요래 두제 감다 삼바테 때문에 상부체보래 냠바체고 말에서 텐데를 송샤 망부 요래 상게 좀 되게 히 내주 가리 임바데 땡아라주 삼을단다 너네 간데 삼기 요바 심라 규르주 땅에 요사 심라 규르주 땅 거바 텔레테니아니 고네 콘도 소소 셈데고 셈데 랑신 요사데 티만네 로보로 아체레 셈데 콘도 챤다 가제 챤 차도 챤 미시바 몽바데 테 랑신게 마레 테랑 대고야지 마레 메인데 차보라 대그르 맞아 멜 드라무시 요아치 요 마라 텐데 마레 셈데 코 요아타야 요로 로보르게 kengi wange 콘도 당가제데 미시봉바 요르데 미시베 몽바 세야 요르와 나저 상게 요르 셈데 야 타르타르타 샴바 세와 샴베 삼로 시제네주 쉐베야 야게타 요레셔라 티도나 카소라 상게 좀 되는 지된 칸을 뱀네 시네주 람게네주 라 시템바니 람탑싱이 제부꾼이라 서고 남샤시에 또주강가 다시 줌셔네시 말에 뭐 내줄이야 코라트야 퍼주데 삼을타 신기나 무슨 토도 받은 데데데데 두게 와라 어디지셔나 야
So the Buddha came to the world and taught these four truths, four nobles, or the four noble truths, that all this is suffering and so forth, and that suffering has a cause, and all that the cause of suffering can be eliminated, and so forth. And so the Buddha has taught all of this in a way that accords with reality. All that the Buddha has taught is backed by logic. And so one of the main sort of logical points is that everything is dependent upon causes and conditions. So our abode, our sort of habitat, our various possessions, our body, all of these things arise from previous causes. It's not as though we accept like some kind of creator God. If that were the case, that gods could just create things for us, we wouldn't have to make effort at anything. It wouldn't be, they could just like make cups and this and that, and we wouldn't have to sort of make any effort. But it's not the case that there is some sort of creator God that can just bring things into existence, but rather all that we experience, so our body, the environment that we are in, our suffering, our happiness, all of these things arise from causes and conditions. So the experiences that we have when we do good things, when we create positive causes, that is going to lead to happiness. And when we do negative actions, we're going to create suffering. So this is something that we can see directly for ourselves when we make effort at something and we do so with a kind of positive motivation. We're able to like see in this life that we gain benefits from that. So this is something where when we make effort and develop various qualities, we can see that we are able to develop those kinds of qualities, and also that there's a correspondence between causes and results. When we do good things, if we put sort of good effort into something, we will get good results from that. And so even though it is the case that we can see the results in this life, this extends beyond that. We have to give up this body, but our mental, our consciousness will continue, and the continuity of that will have imprints that we have created in this life. And so this, as the Buddha has taught, all compounded phenomena are impermanent and based upon causes and conditions. And so this is important that we recognize that this isn't just sort of like the Buddha felt like saying this or something, but it actually accords with reality. And so the Buddha has taught this sort of basis, this basic kind of truth to us in order that we might be able to affect change for ourselves. Because there's the fundamental factor that our minds are changeable, that because our minds are in the nature of clear light, and all of the kinds of stains, our various afflictions of anger and jealousy and hatred and attachment and so forth, are adventitious. They are not in the nature of mind, but rather are sort of temporary. They're conditions that we are able to get rid of. And we can develop these kinds of positive qualities of love and compassion more and more until we are able to bring them to their sort of completion. And we are also able to develop our knowledge of phenomena more and more until we are able to actually get at the kind of nature of things. So this, in this way, the Buddha has taught in this unerring kind of way the basis, the path, and the result that comes about. And it's, again, it's shown to us such that we will make an effort at the proper kinds of causes, because we have the capacity to change and develop our mind, but it's really up to us to make that sort of effort at developing the causes that will lead to those results.
Oh yeah. Oh that oh that did it. Oh the into Dakar so that and the Geshe was some. Oh the I don't know Sanjay from dead and Jidan can't pay it. Then Messibe Kombura. Jidan come Keba Mambo Bear Jidan come charge Tonda Mambuchen. Sanjay Che Yang Double Levy the cowboy they converted the Ora. Sanjay from dead and Jidan can't pay. When they trying to get subject Geshe Yeshe. Tandang Harazutana now I'm doing the door, Tavish, but she would send. I never saw that you are the he lost at the Yakena. I never said the Roma.
Oh, get. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, Tenica soda. Oh, Tatunda, Sanjay from the so shabby. She said, near to the Turim de Mambuch, Dua, Kashet, Tandangazulo, and Major Kalakabut in the yard. In a lot, Changna. Me, Shebali, I again do I say, Chambata Sewas, Kangala kept to a yard, Changina, Tandangaran to my sons are called Young maybe so there's some Gitua or Timato. She needs to the Kanganga to Changba, Chen, and Samlutana, she a yard no. Or tea in the Tarin Java, the Keva Sambu in some Gurua. Oh, this Sanjay Chumda then Jidan Pe, Darangara Zutina, Chi Lepche, the Kanga Yamnichim Haduna, she near to the Kanga chick. So you said some touching but then real I'm getting as a song shadwa. Oh, the initiation near to the Pangusumla Tutu Padurate and the song yardo. Oh, they in the chair which in Chisungudua. I said, Relam Tramu Jebe, Namju Danshere. Rigbe Lamne ko she she the Sanjay song shed, Rigbe Lamne pa. Trash and Chebach and the Shay and do some gora. Relam Tramu Jebe, Namju, we should have getting one name, but the share to your race on gora. Relam Tramu Jebe, Namju dance. The Nick Asher. The Nidire, Relam Tramu Jebe, Namju. Dear, then Midabare, Dungaware, Tenis, and Jetamje, Jamba Konguru, Zawa Kombur said, the Ashe, or Midabare, Kiji, Jigidu, Matsam Maris. So Yameli China, Konyamsolan, so sending Jota at the Gray or Resungora. Without Bata Chamba, the Ninja Sobatsu Kanga Sonero, and the Shulu to Kanga Susu Tamala Shan and Yamsolan and one social in Jota Yobata, Yamson Yovashi or Resungora. Shulu Tambarisha and Yamleta. It's a Jutsula Kebe Nagbe. The Desun Shange Sanjay Song the 6 and so like I say, me to the song shop, Kangatanda Yora. There's a man and a Sanjay Chumden depend the Karasun Tandahako Umara. There's a Kanga de Sigi Choroche, Yanga, the Yambuchi Shachi Dua. Then Jidan come daily, Yona, Rambuchi Sum dos or Oti Rambuchi Sum Resera. Jidan Dina Rimjin Namsu Namse. Shanda Sari Dore, and a carrier kept to stare him with the Kemidua. Ota Yota Titi Tisonza. Around to Tindelia, Tarin Jari, Kebasambute. Yamsulam met with selling table to the mountain and Yamsulam took a show some. They had the young dog, but she needs a young dog. Tartu was soon shasam. Lammy needs the Kanga Tartu was soon shot. Tindishi Yamichi, Kebasambu in Tebate, Kebasambu in some. Mountain take you into Che. Tinde Lamden again that Tindisha, Keva show some Malam Jawa, Tindisha. Oh, teach it, love shelter. I'm on Richard. To do you love not do it.
Sorry for that little interruption. So here, the Buddha's coming to the world is something that is extremely rare. Again, the Buddha came to the world not just to sort of like tell us a story, but to give instructions and advice to show us through his direct realization, this kind of knowledge that accords with reality. And so the Buddha coming to the world, there are times, eons, where that is something that doesn't happen. And the Buddha having come and taught this pure Dharma, the profound and extensive Dharma. There are very many stages of this, but we should recognize how fortunate of an opportunity it is that we have been able to encounter such teachings as this, as they are so rare. And this is something, again, where we may not be able to take it all into practice all at once, but we have the sort of seeds, we have the seeds of love and compassion that we can develop such that it extends to all sentient beings. We have the seeds of wisdom such that we can eliminate all kinds of obscurations to knowledge, that we can get rid of all of our ignorance. And so again, even if we don't do this all at once, this is something that we are able to do through our own kind of development over time. There's a verse that Je Lama Tsongkhapa has said that we are able, we investigate what the Buddha has said with our own wisdom, looking at how things are impermanent and suffering and so forth. We are able then, through our own practice, to develop these kinds of understandings. So we have, it's not about just sort of learning the words of the Buddha, but rather recognizing that these are things to be implemented, that they're actually beneficial for us if we put them into practice. And so the Buddha, again, didn't sort of teach poetry or something else that's like a story, but rather things that we need to ourselves put into practice. And so first we should, again, recognize the extreme fortune that we have to have encountered the teachings of the Buddha and the words of the Buddha. And make a kind of aspiration that whatever it is that we're not able to put into practice now, that we have the ability to do so in the future, with this kind of faith in both our fortunate situation, our ability to change, and a kind of long-term thinking. We should think, may I develop all of these qualities that I have not yet developed? May I develop them in this life, or if not in this life, in a future life, and have this kind of resolve to pursue this path lifetime after lifetime.
Oh yeah, that more than this one. Oh, that I think Karsura. Sravasti, Jimmy Kumbaga, the Tandesti Karsura. It should be shared here, Kugunanje, or Yavuchon. That the Jimmy Kumbangima, Bakashaji Dore, the condition do Nayata, Komjayada, and then Lobjon Chia, the Kanga Pemisi Yabuyore. This one came back to the Kanga. She said, I came back Yabuyore. The Gange said in the Nema, Consul Shisha Shigame, Shanda Saban Yange Mambu, some Kasha Sabayana, some the Rene, Lelab to the Sesha. Tenia Lanching my Berlin is the Sung the Shaggy. Shanda Saban Yangayana, and Kasha Tambu Makuna, Nibati Shediko, Niba Maguna, Subashi and Shikuri, some Sawat in this and Shaggy. Oh, this on the Karsora. Oh, Tiriti, so Terry, the Shaya Kugabia Buchon, the Sonamabusas, Kabasam Buchon, some certain. Diana, she does an Yamanashimare, Kadu Temambu Kudoa. Some Jalsem, she share or some carnation that ran to a lawyer lady, no more than Shimbare. Oh, today I thought not doing on secret. Oh, teacher. Tanda de Karsura Church, the Chuzo, Teresi, Tiresi, Capture, Tegdoa, or Tian Kansag, Kona Church as a desert, Tegacha Mato, Churchichava Mato Kansa Chomara, Anazu Kansaka Marachina Mato, Tique Tilitime. In a taco Churchichava, standing from then they choose on the from then they rani dancing, teacher Malashus on Godoa, from then the Koranga treated the Koranga Shamjishuda. Chijajas, Lamas and the Chili Charter, the Church of Tukon and Sasha. And then Rani, you sing it to Shabalish, Church, Jibameba Shasho Yara. I said in Nora Danci, Madriba, Tindeo, Marangusum, the Tueda, Kun Longs and the Paya, which in the share Yara. So then Jibamega to the Shasho Yara, or Tin Ducasoda. Or Tindechan and that is Shagashara, and it is Sheba. Lecture the children they are should somebody say, I no do that in the young cigar. Or teach in Somalia, 2 chairs, Combe, Kerbushida, Nishanda, Suma Kiloma Samata, Roa. And it's choosing a Geshenda Kanga, Losa Kanga, and about Combalite teacher, Tingi Rana to the Kanga, 2 chairs, gave us some Bushida Chonson, and also lawyer Lena. Oh, that they gave us some in some sort of church, Shaggy, so the Cabucho 2 chairs, or chairs we ran, you say, last one, so.
So here, I would just like to say how impressed I am by everything that happens there at the Abbey, all of the kind of practice and prayers and study that you do. This is something that is really incredible, and I rejoice in it. And I would just like to say that some of the teachings that I've given are for the sake of those who might be listening who are newer to this. So sometimes we don't get something on the first hearing, but when we hear it again, we are able to understand, or maybe on the second hearing, we don't get it, but on the third hearing, we're able to understand that. So just kind of having a recognition that some of these teachings are given for those who might be newer to the Dharma, and in order to benefit them by this kind of repeated exposure to things. And so this is such a fortunate opportunity to be able to practice the Dharma. And again, I would just like to stress that this is really about the kind of greatness of the Dharma. Again, when we are normally sort of prostrating to a teacher, it's really explained that we're prostrating to the Dharma, like one is making a prostration to that throne as it represents the kind of greatness of the Dharma. And the Dharma is, again, something that can be sort of stated fearlessly because it accords with reality. And so I would just like to say that if there are any sort of mistakes, I don't remember things as well as I used to. And side note, as the translator is also potentially makes mistakes. But to all of you who the nuns and the Sangha there, venerable children, to all of those who have listened, I would just like to rejoice in what has happened and rejoice in this auspicious kind of fortunate circumstances that we have had. This has made me really happy to do these teachings, and I rejoice.
Oh yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, for land, sun, and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offer to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous action spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losong's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Mandalakam Niryatayame. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends.
Oh yeah.
So, Geshe, on behalf of everybody at the Abbey, we really want to thank you for giving these teachings. People have benefited so much from them. And thank you also, Katrina, for making the bridging the gap so we can understand what he's saying. Could you translate what I said?
Katrina, we can't hear you.
Gen la kerang sungche di naya la tukche nang sergyorawa
Oh yeah.
pendok chenpo chik chung-song.
Yeah.
Pendok chenpo chik chung-song.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, better, which one? Oh, yeah, we should have it. Let's not move sauce to share. Oh, then you do what you want. Oh, Shangan get Shangan share. Garala Suna Mambutoso, Pacha Mambusaso. It's only pendant to share.
Yeah, it's a good sort of dependent origination. There's a great benefit that comes from both parties, you know, and a great deal of merit that is generated through this kind of activity.
So we wish again, Rinpoche to live a long and healthy life. And that's not just so he can drink tea, but because we're going to request more teachings. And so we had the idea, we had a couple of ideas. We're open to whatever he would like to teach. But one idea we had was his book on the rice seedling sutra, to teach his book that he wrote on that. Another idea was to teach some of the chapters from Nagarjuna Sawe Sharab, particularly the 4 chapters that His Holiness really likes. So those are 2 ideas we have to continue the teachings, and he may have something else that he would like to teach us too.
Okay. So genla da ringbo shurona la shaten tembo yu ringbo shugores.
Oh, yeah.
Da maungpar nganso yangkyar sungchen nangya la shugires. Hine juja yeah, chichana jela da kecha shegire yine da salu jangbe do chigiyuna. Sorry, I forgot the other one, Venerable.
Okay, one is the Sawe Sharab, some of the 4 chapters from that. The other was the book he wrote on the Rice Seedling Sutra.
Yeah, chichen da salu jangbe do yina yanga Sawe Sharab ileu kashe chi Geshe nangna ta maungpa chi shugore ro. I don't know if we'll decide it over Zoom today, Venerable, but maybe.
Yeah, my next thing was we will send a formal request letter. Yeah, but I didn't want everything to close without making our request again, because we really value these teachings very much. It's very difficult to get these kind of teachings.
Kirangi sungchen nangshin tadi kumpore rawa. Ani nganso kechempo tsigiore mutune sungchen nangna la gavo chegiresta.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, to chase. Angara Tangji Shukchambu Chiri, and that there to the shit on the pay of what is and because shit on the Awuri some Rawasi. Oh, Tangavi, Rawana Rona, Molam Ronate. Oh, no, shit to get Rawachi. Oh, yeah.
So I hope to also be able to continue to give teachings in the future, and you should also make prayers that we're able to continue to do this. So yes.
Oh, yeah. What to say? Oh, yeah.
So thank you again, Genla. Thank you, Katrina, for making this possible. Thank you, everyone, for joining us online and participating in this dependent arising. And if you would like to make a donation, in gratitude for these teachings, all the information is available in the chat box.
Oh, yeah, to share. What do so? Give us something. Yeah, to share someone. Someone just did it. Let's show. Oh, yeah.
So Jema Jeon. Jema Jeon, right?
Oh, they go. Oh, look at Yabu Chansha. Pay Yabu to share.
Thank you all.
Oh, yeah.